You're watching Morning at NTV.
Now, welcome back and thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. It gives me absolute pleasure. Just know that you didn't move a muscle and you're still watching NTV right now. My name is Romeo Busiku. We are heading into our next conversation this morning. The Tech Note conversation is about the land tenure system in Uganda. Now, before we get into that, remember Uganda is celebrating her independence today right there in Soronko district. Everything is in order. Just make your way there if you're not there. Celebrations are already underway. Mr. Mwebesa came here. Mwambutsu Ndebesa said that it's not a citizen celebrations, but rather a state celebration, and it should be the other way around, putting citizens at the forefront of these celebrations. But then more is yet to be seen in this regard, because we are seeing the state being involved in these celebrations and the citizens staying at home enjoying the luxury of this of this national holiday. But then two stories this week tell Uganda's land tenure system in pain and tears, by the way. One in Mbale, where the heirs of British collaborator Semei Kakungulu have threatened to evict residents of the land Kakungulu got as a gift from the British for his services. The other is the Lusanja in Wakiso, where a court in Kampala ordered residents of a piece of land they claim to have purchased from someone else. There's no recourse for these people, but as we celebrate 57 years of independence, we ask a very pertinent question. How did we get here? Well, joining me in studio is Mr. Frederick Kawoya, the chairperson of the Uganda Land Alliance, to help me dissect some of these issues, and he joins me right now. Good morning.
Good morning, listeners.
So, how did we get here? Why do we have so many land tenure systems?
Yeah, to start with, land is usually political, and the coming of the British in Uganda looked at land as an instrument, and they used land as an instrument to achieve their political ambitions. So what they did was to study power dynamics in the country, and land was used to help them achieve their mission of conquering and acquiring support from Ugandans at that time. And so what they did was to create a system that would enable them, first of all, access the land in Uganda, but also to get the support that they needed. And so they structured land in Uganda in three folds. One was to create what was considered as a Milo system, and so they used that to reward those who were royal and were willing to support their bid. And so we saw quite a number of chiefs. We saw quite a number of chiefs acquiring a mile. A mile was given in recognition of the contribution. So we saw land, especially in Uganda, being converted to a mile system. And initially, land in Uganda was, unlike other parts of the country, was a shared good, where people lived together, used the land collectively, and land was kept in trust by the chiefs and the king. And so what they did was to parcel this land and allocate it to those who were royal. And it became an instrument of control, especially by the Queen and the British, because you had to be royal to them. It was like a patronage system where to acquire land, you had to serve their interest. And so the mile system was created, and so parts of this country's land was allocated to certain kingdoms just because they wanted to get the support from the kingdom. And so it created a dual system where you have squatters on the land, and then you have someone owning the title who has a lot of powers over this land. Sometimes he's absent, but he owns the land. So land was shifted from a physical commodity that was shared by the community to a paper, a commodity that the value is on the paper, called a land title. And that titling was a British style that was introduced here and was embraced. And so one, it enabled the British acquire land, the crown land that the British had control over. And this, created the problem of dual ownership. And I think that was one of the problems. Then the second one was the interest to acquire land for producing raw materials. You know, Uganda was destined to produce cotton for the British, to produce coffee for the British, and the farming system was structured to serve the interests of the West. Celebrating independence now, the model has not changed. We still look at farming as an avenue to produce for the West, to produce coffee. So the land system that was created was one that would enable large-scale production for a market for the sweet tooth of the white man in Britain. So the same model prevails up to now, and I think that created part of the challenge.
So where did the bona fide occupants of Bibanja come from?
I think Uganda got into this problem, and the 1995 recognizes the occupants of land, the bona fide occupants, and the three land tenure systems. It recognizes the mile, it recognizes the freehold, the leasehold, and the customary tenure, which is constitutes over 70 to 80% of the land in Uganda. But the bona fide occupants has been a problem. I think two problems. One is the occupants, and then the absentee landlord. These two problems have persisted, but we have not solved them. I think what our political leaders have tried is to window dress the problem and say we are going to maintain the dual ownership on land. You have the owner of the mile, if you are talking about the mile land, and the squatter. And so they introduced the rent which has failed to work of 1,000, which was supposed to be paid to the owner of the land. But you know what? The owners of the land felt the value that was allocated in terms of rent was too small. And so they have found the other way of using that land is to sell it, to transfer this value of this land to another person. And why it's not practical is because in most instances, the squatters do not even know the owner, the real owner of this land, because some of the titles were acquired in 50s, in 60s, and has been transferred over years to people who do not stay within that vicinity. So they don't even know who is the landlord. In my village where I come from,
so
after Abusika,
I'm looking at a scenario where like 10,000 people on the land, you're just squatting, you don't know who the landlord is.
You don't know.
So in the event this person can just wake up and say, okay, I need my land back, everyone leave.
Exactly. And sometimes you get three people coming to you and saying, I'm your landlord, this is my land. But that information is held somewhere far from the communities that have lived on this land, and so they don't even know where to take this rent. And so that creates a problem. The second problem is the Chibanja owner. Who bought his Chibanja? The constitution, the law says, if you want to dispose, you give priority to the landlord. But how do I give priority to a person I don't know? And wait, I bought this Chibanja freely through LOC. I sell through the LOC. So we are creating a situation where people are continuing to acquire land illegally because the law says you should give priority to the landlord. But anyway, the LOCs are stamping and they are confirming that this is a valid transaction. And that's how we ended up with the Lusanja issue.
Well, Idi Amin Dada tried to have a single land tenure system where government was owned by, where land was owned by the government. Do you think it was a better model? In some countries, that model has worked. But you see, you need to steward land issues in a context. Indeed. Looking at the governance issues in Uganda, I don't think it would work because look at the land that the government has owned and has had control. And the question would be, how has that land been administered? Most of the public land in this country, as we know, go and talk about the lunches, the lunches we have had, public schools, markets, all the land that was initially owned by government. If you look at that land, who is owning that land? I don't think government has proved that it can own land and administer it fairly for the interest of all citizens. And I think that is a problem, and I don't think in the current reality we would trust government to hold land under one system. Mr. Kawoya, I come from a community where things like land titles are totally unheard of. An agreement is enough. How best can we bring these people into the formal system? I think we need to change, in my view, the way land is purchased in this country. One is we need to harmonize planning for the land, because we have
areas where land is supposed to be for agriculture. You have real estate coming in. They purchase this land, subdivide it for settlement. And so the land planning in this country is just a mess. So I think one of the ways is to harmonize between the land purchase and the planning. Number two is to remove this duality of Chibanja and then land title, because I don't think where we are going it is still viable. I think the land fund that was at one time created would have been used better to sort out this mess if we are serious about it. One way is to put a halt to any transfers of Chibanja to another stakeholder or titles, and you first sort out the mess, especially in the central here. One way is to make sure that the government should compensate those hold Bibanja, land titles where they are squatters, so that the squatters can acquire the titles and own this land through a mechanism that can be established where people are able to pay back on agreed value. I think that would solve the issue of dual ownership where you have squatters. But then the problem we are creating, this similar problem where we are promoting the issuance of certificates on customary land, because still the elites who have the information are going to move ahead and acquire titles mass on land where they are squatters. So you are going to create a
like
similar
we've
problem.
witnessed in Karamoja.
Exactly.
Investors coming into fence-off sweats of land at the expense of the locals.
Exactly. So there have been efforts of creating community associations to make sure they acquire this land as associations and not as individuals. And this is, I think, one practical way if you really want to give titles. But I don't think for me that the titling is what is going to solve the problem. The customary system had a mechanism of common sharing this land, using it together, and I think we need to promote that. And
Mr. Kawe, it seems everyone is now a land grabber. As an activist, what are some of the solutions to end this debacle?
I think we need a reform. Land reform in this country. We need to put a limit to how much land an individual should acquire. Because we know that people who are robbing this country of resources through corruption, the only commodity where they're investing is land. All the least because the economy is not working. If you earn some money, the only way of investing is acquiring land. I think practically, one, government needs to look at what are the drivers and the speculations on this land, and then try to fix some of these drivers. To start with, the issue of speculations over land needs to be controlled by ensuring that the tenure security for those who are staying on the land is guaranteed, so that people have the security to own the land. Number two is investing in land, especially investing in agriculture, to ensure that people who are on this land can be able to use it productively, to be able to earn a living and a better livelihood, but not to transfer the land to those who have capital.
So ideally, let me get this straight, if government comes to a land that is contested, help those 10,000 people on that land instead of just chasing them away. If they are subsistence farmers, find a way to empower them so that they can engage in commercial agriculture.
Exactly.
To make headway, instead of just having an investor come in, buy off the land and evict all the people.
Exactly.
I get your point. Uganda, that's the chairperson of Uganda Land Alliance, Frederick Kawoya. Thank you for coming to help us dissect some of these issues. You've been very, very, very helpful in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're still watching Morning at NTV. Right about now, the Nation Media Group Farm Clinic is the conversation we'll be having right after this break. Keep it here.